Hiya, it's Leah here. Oh, it's been so long I filmed a video. I moved, I'm at a new place. I'm still on my trusty old sofa. I have a bookshelf now, like a proper one. Future videos will probably be around the bookshelf because I just like to have that aesthetic in the background. But for this video, because I didn't make any videos recently, I have my trusty iPad and opened on Goodreads. So for this video, I just wanted to do a general 2023 like recap. So looking through my books read in 2023 and just yeah, have some short, hopefully short comments about the different books that I read. And then maybe I will add a little bit of extra longer comments for the last ones towards the end of the year when I was moving places and yeah, and didn't make a video because of that. So let's get going. So starting off, so I have a couple of books here that I just listed on the 1st of January 2023 because I don't know what happened, if I just forgot to set the date read or what this is. They didn't have any date read date on them, and then I just, when I knew I had read it in 2023, I put them in 2023. So let's start with those. So among others here we have Neil Gaiman, Norse mythology, which was I guess a sort of reread because I had listened to the audiobook before, Norse mythology. So, and yeah, obviously living in Sweden, enjoy that. Then we also have Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, Good Omens. This is interesting because I read this one like mid last year. I don't know why it doesn't have its proper date. Oh well. Good Omens. So I watched actually the TV show with some friends, Good Omens, the first season. We also watched the second season for that matter. And we all loved it. So, and that kind of got me interested. And then we also watched The Sandman, which is also by Neil Gaiman, who works here with Terry Pratchett in Good Omens. So I was very interested to read the book, and I enjoyed it. And as always, when you have two different mediums, you can do the comparing game, which was also interesting. But I liked both. I have to say, like I can't say the book was better, honestly, because I really love the show because the actors are so great for those two roles. And then I also have two Brandon Sanderson books that I read. That was in the beginning of last year, that's true. So one is Shadow of Self, which is the Mistborn, one of the Mistborn novels, I think number 5. And then also Bands of Mourning, which is number 6, I believe. So I read those two books. The Mistborn series I loved in the beginning. Especially the Final Empire, the very first book, is still my absolute favorite. I love that one. I swallowed it in like 2 or 3 days, basically. But then as it came into like the new generation, which is from book 4, it kind of got a bit less for me. So it kind of went downhill for me. And yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much towards the end. Then I'm not sure I'm gonna say every single book that I read because I've read 69 books. Maybe I will do. Then I have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, I think is how you say it. Cute book, but the writing style kinda put me off because it's not like, it felt a little bit like a teenager or a kid writing. In all honesty, but the stories were cute, but to me it didn't grab me that much. The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, if you don't know, it's like some of the series on Netflix's. Oh god, what's the showrunner called? I should know his name. But anyway, he has used, among others, Henry James books. Recently he used Edgar Allan Poe's poems for the Fall of the House of Usher Netflix series, and the Turn of the Screw is basically one part of the Haunting of Bly Manor behind it. So I read the book and I loved it. Very different because again it's only just a small part of the Haunting of Bly Manor. So I can highly recommend. A very short book as well. I read The Great Gatsby. I think that was my first book, if I'm not entirely wrong, in 2023. I'm pretty sure. Because I started in December 2022. I do remember that. Because I remember it specifically because in December I was at home in 22 and I ran out of books. So I went to the bookstore and the one book in English that I recognized was like, yeah, this is on my to read list was The Great Gatsby. So I was like, okay, let's go for it. So I read that one. And then we have Until Night and Day by, is it Bai or Bei Suha? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. That was a trip, very like one of those surreal kind of stories. Very interesting. I think it was my first truly surreal story to read. And then also the same with After Dark, Haruki Murakami. That was very cool. I love that one, especially because that one had actually timestamps for chapters. So in theory, you could try and read the book according to the timestamps, which is challenging though, because it goes through the night. I think we started at like 10 p.m. or 11 even. We started late, and then it goes for the whole night after dark. But good book, I enjoyed it. Very interesting. Then I read Solaris, back to sci-fi, and I remember in my review of Solaris, I felt a bit bad because I loved it, the way it started, and then it completely lost me, and I was like, no, why? Why did you go this way? And yeah, I stand by that, or that's still my memory of it, but the potential was very big there. And then I also read Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, catching up in classics. Love that one more than any kind of Hulk origin story, because this is not the Hulk, this is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that was so good. I liked the psychological aspects in it. Good fun. And then, oh my god, this is so tiny. Ah, here, the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Yeah. Oh, I love that one. I read that one around March because I remember I was in the US, in New York, visiting a friend. And I read the Portrait of Dorian Gray and I told her that I couldn't stop reading. It was very cool. I love to see the character development in Dorian Gray and how you were following him, and yeah, very, very cool story. You can by who wrote it? By Oscar Wilde, of course. Left me there for a moment. Then what we have next? Oh yeah, Heels Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. This is a short story. It's like 20-30 pages. And it's basically metaphorical. So yeah, I mean, stuff happens, but the things that are said are not the things that are actually going on. So that was very interesting. Also, I talked with a friend, again, I was still in the US, in Florida now, about this one and interpretation. So it's such a short story, I can highly recommend to read it. And then this book I even bought in the US, The Last Heir to Blackwood Library. I liked that one, but it was a bit like, I liked it for the most part, but then like the longer the story, when it was like a mystery and we had like time skips, or our protagonist forgot heaps of time. But the longer I read, the more I felt like the book wasn't staying true to its own rules, not really, and had kind of, yeah, like things were happening that didn't really make sense, and stuff like that kind of bothers me, especially if it's a mystery, then it kind of needs to flow together or piece together in the end. And I felt like there were a couple of holes in this one that were just like, that doesn't make sense, or that wouldn't have happened realistically. So yeah, but it wasn't a bad read per se. And then another book I bought in the US, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I thought that was nice. I thought that was kind of a cute little adventure story. It wasn't exactly what I expected, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, That was cool. And the last book that I bought while I was in the US is Gabriel Garcia Marquez and then Chronicles of a Death Untold. That one was freaking cool. So I intentionally wanted to read Gabriel Garcia Marquez that wasn't very long because I planned to read maybe this year 100 Years of Solitude. Before I went into like one of the bigger books, I wanted to read one of his smaller ones just to get the style and feel for it. And this one was very interesting. It was like a death or a murder had already happened, and that's why Chronicles of a Death Untold. And then basically you go like through like memories of the protagonist, thinking back on things that were known, and you slowly get more and more information, even though you already know like the end result, but you get more information how it got there. And that was very interesting, like even background information, the way it was told. I really enjoyed it. I can highly recommend that one. And then I think that's the last one. I finished Mistborn with The Lost Middle by Brandon Sanderson. Same thing there, it just went downhill, so yeah, we're gonna talk more about that. And then I read Khalil Gibran, The Broken Winds. This was purely out of a booktuber that I follow recommendation, that it was very beautiful poetry, and it was like this tiny book. I'm like, I can do that, because I'm not much of a poetry reader, so I was a little bit unsure, but I enjoyed it. It was a cute love story, and yeah, very short and beautifully written, I can agree. And then I read a first nonfiction of 2023, The Lady's Book of Etiquette and Manual of Politeness. So this was like literally a guide or a handbook for ladies back then, I guess 1800s. I don't actually remember. I think it says in the book which time period we're in. On how to behave, on how do you properly call, how do you write invitations, when do you call back, and how should you receive visitors, how should you behave when you host a dinner, how should you behave when you go as guest to a dinner, and all those things. Like even there was a lot about handwriting and how terrible handwriting is for many ladies, and that's a no-no. It was so interesting because it was so self-serious. It's like, yeah, it was just kind of cool to, yeah, back then that those were the rules according to the author. I don't know the author, and it's tiny in this variation. Florence Hastily, maybe? Don't quote me on that. Oh, and then I read E.T.A. Hoffman, The Nutcracker, which is funny because I read it in, like, it wasn't really, I think we were pushing summer now, but beautiful, lovely, funny story with, yeah, toys fighting each other. That was good fun. Ooh, and then I read Mary Shelley Frankenstein. Love that one. First time reading, I had like been exposed to Frankenstein adaptations, and I guess mostly animated, because I don't remember watching any of the old movies. Maybe I did, and don't really remember, but animated stuff. But I had never like really been exposed to the like true full story, if you will. So it was in a sense a new read for me, and it was really good. I so enjoyed it. It's such a good book. I gave it 5 stars. Then we have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. That was also cool. Really enjoyed it. I was very unsure because it was like this super hyped book, and I'm usually a bit careful about extremely hyped books, because often they're like YA, cheesy, stupid romance novels. They're like, there's no real characters in there. Like the protagonist is always perfect or always extremely unperfect until suddenly switch, bam, boom, now everything is nice. So I was a little bit worried, but the premise was so interesting that women could go to a special hidden apothecary if they needed help with getting poisons and stuff. So that was nice. So that premise was too interesting to resist. So, and I read it, and it was totally worth it. It had also some twists and turns in it, which I did not see coming, and so I enjoyed it even more. So that one was really good. So it deserved the hype. And then I read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. That was also cool to read because, once again, I never read it before, but as a yoga teacher, I've read some yogic philosophy and stories and things like that. And Siddhartha is Siddhartha Gautaman, who became the Buddha, which is also talked about in yogic literature, the Buddha and things relating to him. And so yeah, so I was in a sense aware of like the overall general story, but yeah, it was interesting to read Hermann Hesse's approach to it, and also like the kind of life advice and so on that I was giving. But it wasn't nothing like new to me, because I've already, in a sense, I guess, studied it when I do yoga stuff. Because I'm very interested in yoga, and I don't just want to do the physical part, I do the whole yoga, if you will. And then I read my first Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway. I was a bit taken aback in the beginning, I remember, because of her, what was it called, like flow, literally flow, or flow of thought, or something like that. I don't remember, there's a term for it. But basically the protagonists, which there's different POVs, so it's not just one, so it's not just Mrs. Dalloway, it's different ones. Like you are in their thoughts, and their thoughts flow almost like, I guess, like we do, like natural human beings. And then like mid-sentence, the thought could completely change, and they think about something completely else. And it had taken me back at the moment, at the beginning, because I was like, what? I didn't understand what the fuck. Like, we were talking about going on a walk, and then suddenly we're thinking about meeting this guy. It's like, huh? So it took me a while to get into it, but I was intrigued, thank God. And thank God I continued, because once I like got more used to it, I guess, it became easier to understand and to follow. And I still had sometimes to, in all honesty, I had sometimes to reread some passages to pick out the different thoughts and how they relate or not relate to each other. Sometimes they were complete new ones, and to like sort them out. So it was like not an easy read, honestly not, but like the end result, the final result was very good. Very lovely story. I enjoyed it. And then also another super classic that probably many know, The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. And that was my first time reading Phantom of the Opera. First time being fully exposed to the story. The only thing I knew, there was a phantom, and it hit somewhere in the cellar, or that was my assumption, of the opera, and it haunted. I didn't even know like what the story was about. I knew it was about that the phantom was in love with a woman, but that's where my knowledge stopped. And I'm actually kind of glad, so I got to experience it for the first time, and I enjoyed the story. I was a little bit like feeling sorry for the female protagonist here, because I felt like her two, the phantom and her love interest, both men, were kind of not good guys, if you will. So like poor woman, she deserves better on both ends. That was my own personal opinion here, but definitely worth reading. Oh, right, and then I read Tolkien on fairy stories. So again, nonfiction number 2 for this year. Where Tolkien, I think this is like more of an excerpt or a smaller version of I think like a class or something that he taught at the university. And this is like something that then later on got published, but it's I think a smaller part of it, where he basically talks about like why fairy stories are not like children's stories. They're not like just they're not just for kids, and that he considers like his own universe, the Lord of the Rings universe, Middle Earth, and so on, to be fairy stories, and he argues for them, and why they're like that they have like good messages, and that's why they're not just for children. So I really enjoyed that. And then I read YA, which is not very normal for me. I don't read a lot of YA, but this one got recommended to me by my friend in New York, and now I finally got around to read it. Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. And if you know the Shadow and Bones Netflix series, so Six of Crows, Shadow and Bones is another series, but it takes place in the same universe and very close. I think it's like only a couple of years distance between Shadow and Bones and Six of Crows. Officially in the book, Six of Crows takes place after Shadow and Bone, but in the Netflix series they kind of warp them together, and actually it looks like what happens in the next season is actually what I read here in the first book, so we're completely off time-wise, but regardless, Six of Crows, absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it, I swallowed it. That was one of those books that I just ate up. It was so good, such good fantasy, such a good world. The characters in particular, the characters were so bloody good, and I enjoyed them so much, and it was interesting to read from every POV. Of course I had my favorite, yeah, very good book. I was very happy because I only bought this one, I remember, which is why I didn't read the second one for a while. So because I first wanted to check, well, maybe I don't like it. It's why I'm always careful with YA, because normally it's not exactly my thing. But this one can highly recommend. The one thing with YA is like young adults, so like I think they are 16 in the book, but they definitely behave like adults. So, but that's a general YA complaint in my personal opinion. I just don't really understand, why do you need to make them 16? Just make them 26. Then I wouldn't feel so weird when they're kissing and stuff. But maybe that's a me problem too. But anyway, regardless of that, like in my head, also having watched the Netflix series, they were as old as the actors were, because I had watched that first and then I read Six of Crows. But yeah, loved it. Very, very good. Can highly recommend. And then I read my first Canadian literature, Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. Oh, that was so cute. I loved it. I was first a little bit intimidated because it's a big book. And it's like, I knew it was like a book for children. Here I knew. And like children books like The Nutcracker, I can enjoy more than the YA, because they're cute and they have good messages, and they're really well put together and they make sense and things like that. So you don't run into stuff like with this the Lost Library book that I talked about, that in the end it doesn't make sense. But children books are often like, they make a lot of sense, everything fits together, and they're very often very cute, and this one no exception. Anne of Green Gables, I loved it. It's so good. And then I read a couple of Russian literature. Ivan Turgenev, First Love, and The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, and Three Deaths by Leo Tolstoy. So read all of those in short succession, because they're all smaller books. First Love was very interesting. I thought I had it figured out, I remember that, and then in the end there was, I'm sorry, I'm just keeping my PC on so it doesn't go off. It had a twist in the end that I totally did not see coming towards the end. The Death of Ivan Ilyich was also interesting, because it was like, well, I didn't know exactly what to expect when you say the death of so is it about this person dying, or are they already dead when we start? And so following this story, it was like a retelling of how he lived until he died. But basically we already knew he would die. Or maybe he did die in the very first page. I don't remember and exactly, but I do remember that then we went back and we looked at his life, like how it was. And he didn't want to die, he wanted to fight. That's what I remember very much. And then in the same book I had Three Deaths, also by Leo Tolstoy, which, yeah, was Three Deaths. Not much to say, it was a very short one, and yeah, I didn't have much impression from it. It was okay. And then I read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Again, a book that got recommended to me, and I think it was it hyped up? Not sure. This was one of those books that I really liked for almost until the very end. But already a little bit before that, I started noticing, like, it's starting to not add up anymore, and it's yeah, it's once again cheating itself. It's cheating its own rules in order to make the story fit and work, and especially it forces the twist. It wouldn't work without bending the rules, which, yeah, then you haven't really deserved that twist. So that was sad. The general premise and idea I really liked and enjoyed, about the patient that stopped talking, patient that killed their husband. And also, like, the final reveal was actually a nice idea. I'm not gonna spoil it, but just how everything fit together, just that didn't really work. which is a shame. And then we have H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. Oh, this one I remember well because I started reading it somewhere in 2023, like early. Then I lost the book in the subway. Don't ask me how. I just did. Because I had it with me, and then when I came home, I didn't have it anymore. And then I didn't rebuy it for the longest time. But yeah, now we're moving towards, I think, September, October. I could check it, but doesn't matter. And then I finally finished it. Did I reread? I think I like quick read the beginning because I hadn't gotten far. I had like gotten into chapter 4 or 5, something like that. So I think I quick read the beginning just to like refresh my memory because it had been months in between. And then I finally finished it, and I thought it was a cool story, interesting story. It was not really what I expected, and I really like to see like I guess the temperament, the emotions, the like behavior of the Invisible Man, and like his reasoning and like the way he thought once he was invisible, and also how it came to be, which we also sort of find out, which is yeah, very cool. I can recommend it, and it's a short one, so it's like, I don't know, 200 pages, maybe 180, somewhere there. But yeah, I still managed to read it in several months because I lost it. And then finally now I bought Crooked Kingdom, which is the second novel in the Six of Crows, and the final one for now at least. Maybe there comes more. And it is kind of an ending, so if more will come, it will be like a next kind of era, if you will. But Crooked Kingdom, just like the first one, loved it. It was really good. It had so many twists and turns, and the characters that we loved were still there. And I mean, Brecker, of course, he was a fucking hero. Should I say that? I don't know. Maybe I'm being put out. He was a superhero in this one, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. Those crows, again, for me being adult, not 16-year-old little boys and girls. So for me, this just really worked. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. Really, really good. And the series, because again, the first book hasn't really been in the series yet. Parts of it were. But the second book was more featured in the Shadow and Bones series on Netflix than the first. So again, we're very wrong time-wise. Like, a lot of beats that are in the second book are in the Shadows and Bones season 2. And that was very interesting to watch, because now I had read the book first and then I watched the Netflix season, because I waited, because season 2 I think was already out at that point, but I waited because I knew now that I was getting the second book, and thank God I did, because yes, it was a lot from the second book was in season 2. And very well portrayed for the most part. Again, it's just a bit weird because it's almost more like a reimagining and using like little bits and pieces here and there. Woo! Okay, I need to drink. All right. Continue. Next up, Alice in Wonderland, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So I read both. Officially, there were 2 novels by Lewis Carroll, and I read both of them. Illustrated, very much fun. I love the illustrations for these, and I have of course seen the very known animated Alice in Wonderland, and then also the live action with Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter. But yeah, it was interesting to read the original, and it was quite different. I would say the animated one is... No, it's not that close actually. There's a lot of other beats happening, and especially in this one, because you are in Alice's POV, you like really get to know what she feels and things like that, which is always hard to portray in a visual medium because you're not in someone's head, so you need to show things. But yeah, that was an interesting read. And then I read Patroclus, The Slow Regard of Silent Things. Not last year, but I did read The King Chronicles, which is The Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear. The first 2 books, and the third one isn't out yet. And this is a little spin-off, The Slow Regard of Silent Things, with one of the characters, Auri. I say Auri, I don't know if that's how it would be pronounced. who's this little girl living like underneath the university where quote is, or quotee, I'm not sure if you say the E, is studying, and he meets her at some point when she comes out at night. And here we get to like read from her perspective how she lives and what's important to her. And as the title says, it's a slow regard of silent things. And I really enjoyed it. It was cute. It was a bit slow and a bit... It didn't have a huge point to it, if you will. But it was just like, as an extra information, it was cute. And you could read it without knowing the other things. She does, I think, a couple of times think about him, which is then quotee, which you wouldn't know if you didn't read it, but I mean, you would understand that she means someone she knows, so I guess that's good enough. So yeah, that was cute. What else? Next, non-fiction, The Immortal Evening by Stanley Plumley. So this was a sort of putting together of letters written by Keats, Wordsworth and Lamb, and they had this evening at one of those people's home, and it was like, yeah, called The Immortal Evening later, because it was like all these great poets and literary characters coming together, and that was the last time where they were all together, and basically it's like put together a little bit biographical, I guess, but also again a lot of information comes from letters that were written between the people, and then it was like saying, like, also explaining how these people knew each other, who introduced who to whom, and how it came to be and what happened at this immortal evening. In general, it was good, but it had too much like swaying with extra information. So like, if they really just focused mostly on that evening, for me that would have been fine, you know. But they kind of, yeah, they went too far outside that premise and talked a lot about other things. Like, there were a couple of pages just talking about one sculpture art piece that these characters really enjoyed, and it could have been told to me in one sentence, honestly. But yeah, so that was that. And then I read my next Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. Love it. Was very cool story. Yeah, don't need to say more. And then one of my absolute favorite books of 2023. Maybe it will be my number one. I haven't actually thought about number one. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe that will be another video, or in this one, I'm not sure. It's Exhalation by Ted Chiang. Oh my god. I even made like an Insta post when I started reading it, because after I had read the first two short stories. It's a book of short stories, often sci-fi inspired. Not purely, but it's like sci-fi, philosophical, and like it makes you think. Yeah, I love it. Watch it, read it. Exhalation, so good. And then I read, if you know, Disco Elysium Final Cut is a game that is been made by Saum, Estonian indie developers that got a lot of awards for narrative writing and so on and so forth. But the creator and the writer is called Robert Kurwitz, behind Disco Elysium, the game. And he had actually very long ago, I don't know, like before he even started the game development or getting in the idea, he had already like the Elysium world built, and he wrote a book, Sacred and Terrible Air. So since I played the game, I wanted to read that book. It was a fan translation that I read, because I don't think the official book is out in English just yet, because it didn't sell extremely well in Estonia. But regardless, so I read the fan translation, and it was a really cool story. Very different. If you don't know anything about Elysium the world, you can still read it, but I think you will be quite confused. But because I already kind of knew the style, because I had an easier way in. It's generally, I think, not meant to be a story that can just read one by one and you immediately get what you mean. Here we also have a little bit of time jumps, we go forth and back things, and you do need, your brain needs to be on for this one to go in. And then I read my next H.G. Wells, which was The Time Machine. Enjoyed it, cute, like, yeah, I consider it the first time machine story. I don't know if that's true, but I really enjoyed it. Very cute, like how people in the 1800s or when it was would react to a time machine versus like modern. So that was like the extra spin that it was like in old school times. Ooh, and then I read my first H.P. Lovecraft, The Shadow over Innsmouth. Very tiny, short story. It's so good. It has not really much to do, like if you know Cthulhu and like Cthulhu stories. Many say they're like inspired by Shadow over Innsmouth, which I feel like is a bit wrong, because the story The Shadow over Innsmouth was completely different from any medium that I had consumed, which is quite a bit Lovecraftian and especially Cthulhu mythos. But what they did is like take Innsmouth, the city itself, or the town, or the village, I'm not even sure. That they like in a sense copied, but not so much, or not at all really, the story that is specifically happening in Shadow over Innsmouth. So that's a completely new thing. So even if you feel like you know Cthulhu, it's definitely worth reading. It's tiny story. And then I read another one of my absolute favorites, The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. Oh my god, what a good story. I love that book so much. Also one of the books I read really fast, where our guys, they live in Paris, but the Americans, and then they go to Spain for the siesta, which with the bullfighting and things like that. But it's like a lot about just like human emotion, love obviously, and friendship, and blood versus versus love, and things like that, and friendship versus love, and yeah, it was super duper good. I can't say more, just read it. And then I read All the Lovers in the Night by Miyako Kawakami. I think that was again maybe somewhat more hyped story, but to me it didn't speak all too much. It was generally good. It wasn't a bad book in itself, but it's yeah, something was just missing for me a little bit. Ooh, how much more do we have to go? Okay, we're getting there. Then I read Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. If you've seen the movie, I loved having had the movie actually, because it's so many different stories. Like having had the movie a little bit in the back head helped me to follow it, but there was a lot of differences. And I talked about that in my actual review of Cloud Atlas, how the movie tied all the different timelines together, while in the book that's not exactly done like that. So that was also an interesting thing. Then I read Hamlet, my very first ever Shakespeare. I liked it, I enjoyed it. I had a little bit of trouble reading it, English not being my first language, but I got through. It was okay, and yeah, it was good. Then I remember I got like so many first ones. Agatha Christie, and then there were none. Absolutely genius. I tried to solve the murder or the mystery. I was wrong. I was close though. If you can be close, it's right or wrong, I guess. But yeah, if you will, like among the last couple of who could have been, I had one of them, but I had the wrong one. Very cool story if you like murder mystery. The Catcher in the Rye, also amazing story. Loved it. Protagonist, like the way he talked, and like I could, if you would like do an interpretation of him, I would immediately recognize, oh, that's Holden. That's Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, because he has such a specific personality, and that you just want to hug him. You want to hug him and say everything's fine. By J.D. Salinger, by the way, so that was nice. And then also a very cute one, How Do You Leave by Gensaburo, I think. Yoshino. Again, kid story, and like little of coming of age story, or not little, it's a coming of age story. And once again, like what Tolkien also argued, that like these stories, they have a message to tell, and I really enjoyed that in this one. And it was good messages and good like things that happened and things to learn and to think about, so I can recommend it. Oh yeah, and then I read Friedrich Nietzsche, Das Spoke Zarathustra. I don't think I talked about it in any video, because I didn't really feel it. Yeah, gonna leave it at that. And then Rashomon and Other Stories, that is by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Sorry if I'm doing this wrong. Short stories, Japanese short stories. Enjoyed it. Yeah, cute. Not a big book. Easy, fast read. Was enjoyable. And then I read my next Ernest Hemingway, because I loved so much The Sun Also Rises. A Farewell to Arms. Also, absolute genius story. Loved it. Yeah, very invested, and bittersweet ending, and just good story altogether. Also, they end up in Switzerland, which is a little plus for me. And then I read a translation by J.R.R. Tolkien, so not really him written, but like a very old English poem that was then translated by J.R.R. Tolkien, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl and Sir Orfeo. Again, because it was like, again, this kind of old English thing, it was okay, but it wasn't fully my style. And it's a good thing that it was modernized. Stunning in Scarlet, my first, again, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and my first Sherlock Holmes. And it is the first one, I believe. Yeah, it is. Loved it. Was a good one. And I will read more. I didn't in 2023, but I plan to do. Then I read Bram Stoker's Dracula. Having seen the movie, I was surprised by how alike and how not alike it was. And I think many who compare the two say the exact same thing. And yeah, you have to read it to kind of fully understand that. But it was a very good read, enjoyed it. Also the format it was written in, like journals and newspaper clips and things like that. So not directly protagonist POV, other than them journaling. So it was interesting as well. And then I read an actual J.R.R. Tolkien, The Children of Húrin, which was of course finished by Christopher Tolkien, which I enjoyed, to be back in Middle Earth and in the world of actually this is before in Beleriand, was it mostly, but I disliked Húrin, which was interesting. I thought the main character, he was a bit of a not so cool person, which is interesting. But I mean, that doesn't mean that the book failed. Yeah, it's just like I was not really rooting for him, because I thought he constantly made wrong decisions, which was interesting. Then another book that I absolutely loved was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Oh my god, that was so good. Like, that was so good. It was, again, very short story, so I can highly recommend. You should absolutely read it. And the twist in there and the story itself in the beginning was a little bit, what is actually happening here, which I like. I like to think and figure things out. And oh, that was so good. And yeah, can't say much more. And then I read The Book of Five Rings, which by Miyamoto Musashi, which is again non-fiction. So we have read a couple of non-fiction last year, and which was like talking about like the things that a swordsman needs to always win every single sword fight. But it had a lot to do with the mind, being in control of your mind, not let yourself get distracted. So that those were like more for me, the philosophical and spiritual aspects of it. And in yoga we also talk a lot about the mind. The mind thinks it is the master, but you should be the master over your mind, and the mind should be your servant, and things like that. So that was interesting to read, like a Japanese take on it, and from the premise of a swordsman, but it still kind of was applicable to anyone, even without a killing weapon. And then I read Fyodor Dostoevsky, White Nights. Also lovely book, short story about love, and yeah, can't say much more. Then I read my second Lovecraft, At the Mountain of Madness. Awesome. All through. Very exciting. Love the description of the things that they find. I don't want to say more. Ooh, and then I also, very cool story, a chess story by Stefan Zweig. I had no idea what to expect. I just knew that from someone else recommending it, that you don't need to know anything about chess to enjoy the story. And it's true. And it was so bloody interesting, and I did not know that would hit me. and I can't really say it because I think it would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to, so you just have to read it, sorry. Then I read my second Shakespeare, which is Macbeth, which I also enjoyed, but I kind of figured that the whole play thing, like reading a play, is not for me, so I think I'm gonna leave it there. So I have Hamlet and Macbeth, and I'm happy I read some, but it just doesn't fully speak to me, the whole act structure and people coming in and out, and I get it, I do, but yeah, reading wise, it's not for me, and that's okay. Then I finally finished George R. R. Martin and Storm of Swords. This was like my all-year book. So this was the filler book that whenever I waited for new books to arrive, I would read in that one, and then in the end I finished it. And then we had The Secret Teaching of the Vedas, which is again a non-fiction by Stephen Knapp. This book was gifted to me by my old working colleagues, so read through that. Was interesting, but it was a bit preachy, so I wouldn't exactly recommend it. And then I read Where the Crawdad Sings by Delia Owens. Such a good one. Again, loved it. Very good book. Can highly recommend as well. This was my almost last one. We have two more. Then I read The Spy Who Came In From the Cold by John le Carré, which is apparently a George Smiley novel, number 3. I picked this one because this was the one that people highly rated and said is one of the best spy novels ever. And it didn't disappoint, because George Smiley is in it, but he's not like in it extremely heavily. So you actually have a different protagonist. He's more a side character. And was very interesting. Bittersweet ending. Kind of annoyed by the ending, but it didn't destroy the novel. So if you want a spy novel, I can totally agree. The spying aspects in it and all the information, the things that are going, and these like microsecond decisions you have to make, that was very cool to read. And then the very last one was again a kid's book that I read. That's how I finished my 2023. Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Neem. Maybe you know the cartoon. I think the cartoon is called The Secret of Neem. And yeah, so this is about rats that were experimented on, and then they got really intelligent. And even a couple of mice as well. And in the end they fled from the lab where they were experimented on and had like their own little colony. And Mrs. Frisbee is the wife of one of the mice. She's a mouse. That were smart, and her husband taught her to read, and her kids can also read, probably got some of the smartness from the husband. And yeah, you just follow her trying to do everything for her kids. It's very cute. Also, I can highly recommend the animated movie. It's so good, and it's very faithful for the most part. It has a lot more action scenes, which makes sense in a visual medium, and this one is more heartfelt and more feeling. So that's it. I think that should have been the whole 9. I read 69 novels. There was one book that I didn't mention, was there? I think I at least said all the titles. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through one more time. Yeah, so that was my 2023 in books. Whew. I talked for a long time. I need one more time water. All right. So yeah, I'm hoping to pick up doing some videos again. I might be doing like a once a month video. So like, these are my January books, these are my February books. That kind of makes sense to me. And then I don't need to like feel stressed or anything. And I want to enjoy doing this, which I do so far. So that's my plan at the moment for 2024. And yeah, so I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you enjoy this. Yeah, happy reading. See ya.